Vacations are great. We all need and deserve them. They aren't the solution or the prevention to burnout. We never arrive. There's no arrival. To put it like very bluntly, we're all going to die with a to-do list. So I want everyone to imagine you have like a globe, right? And you know how like in school there were those really cool like cross sections of a globe and you could like see the different layers of Earth. Yeah, to see the layers of Earth. So like the outer crust of this is your physical health.
We're honored to welcome Laurel Roberts-Meese. Laurel is a licensed therapist, burnout expert, and fierce advocate for sustainable success.
With over a decade of experience, she specializes in helping executives, lawyers, and entrepreneurs break free from the burnout cycle, not by working less, but by working differently.
She's also a Pepperdine professor, EMDR trauma specialist, and founder of Laurel Therapy Collective, where she leads a team of therapists dedicated to rewriting the rules of achievement.
Her approach doesn't just treat symptoms, it dismantles the toxic myths that keep high achievers trapped in exhaustion. Laurel, welcome to the show.
All right. So before we get started, as many of you know, I am on a mission to really destigmatize the human experience, #BeHuman. So this is where we really like to share, dissect messy parts, real parts, just all of the human parts of our lives that make sometimes being human uncomfortable, sometimes makes us feel a certain way about our experience. Laurel, do you have one, or would you like me to give you an example?
I do have one, but of course I always want to hear examples.
I was on a call with a teammate who identifies as being trans, and they were just talking about their experience right now with hormonal stuff and fears for the future and what could that look like and what does their future look like for needing various care as far as surgical cares.
Yeah.
And we were talking a lot about like this mental health component of being in the middle of transitioning, going through this political environment,
Yes.
and then also people's stigmas around it, and just how much people are unabashingly just sharing their opinions about this sort of stuff. And I don't know, I was just inspired listening to this person being so strong and really doing a lot of important things. They were going to therapy while we were doing podcasting, really taking care of themselves and really making sure that as loud as things are, they were keeping their mental health really secure. And so I was just inspired by talking to them and wanted to share that if you are in a similar position and listening, you are definitely not alone. And it's a very human experience. Hormones in general. I mean, I'm raising an almost 14-year-old boy who cried recently about hormones. Like hormones in general are a really challenging part of our human experience. So Laurel, go ahead.
I actually wanted to build on what you just said. I actually work with a good number of trans people, and this particular climate right now, people are sharing opinions, calling them opinions, but really just like spewing hate. And that the certainty of access to care is not there. And the need for health practitioners, mental health practitioners, doctors to be willing to take a stance is greater than ever.
I want to name that all of those things are rights. I've had people before be like, what rights are being taken away from trans people? I'm like, well, I mean, I think it's a human right to feel mentally safe in your own being. I think it's also a right to be able to go down the street and feel safe and secure.
Yes.
So everything that we just named and you just named, I just want to name it as those are human rights. Absolutely.
So my human moment was really coming to terms with the fact that a friendship that I was really hopeful about and really excited about, the other person was not capable of reciprocating the type of friendship that I really wanted. And I think that, leading up to this kind of realization, I was just like frustrated and like, why isn't this being reciprocated? And mind you, I was not like trauma dumping or floodlighting. This is like the slow progression over time of a friendship, and just kind of being like, well, wait, why didn't this person like show up in a kind of minimal way? And when someone truly isn't capable of showing up as a friend, there's a certain liberation to it. It's like, all right, I'm not going to invest emotional energy because it's not that they're choosing not to. It's that they really just can't. Yeah. And there's a heartbreak to that, but also a freedom.
I also, one of the things when I talk to, and thank you very much for sharing, when I talk to parents and such in this work, sometimes I remind them like this is the first time your kids experience those things. And I
Mhm.
think breaking
Mhm.
up with friends is one of those moments that
Yeah.
as adults we're like, oh my God, get over it. It's fine. But the other thing I always do too is think about it from your perspective, right? Like cutting in line when I was a teacher, you'd be like, oh my God, we're all going to the same place. Why do you care? On the flip side, if you cut in front of me in line in Starbucks, we're going to have some words, right? And so I always say to parents, put themselves in those positions. Understand your kids might be the first time breaking up with a partner
Yeah.
or a friend or whatever. Um, and then also, it hurts us. It's still hard. I've
I
had several
know.
friends that I've had to break up. I actually had a therapist friend that I broke up with as I was starting this nonprofit because she was like, I'm going to stop taking insurance and start paying or charging people $250 an hour. And I was like, my moral compass is trying to get this out for free as much as I humanly can.
Mm.
I don't know if I can sit here with you and
Yeah.
so I had to
Yeah.
break up with a friend, and it's hard as adults too.
Is there any book recommendations, podcasters, just people you would say if someone
Yeah.
wants more detailed info than we may talk about today, where
Yeah.
would they go?
There's a great book by Emily Nagoski called Burnout, How to Complete the Stress Cycle. And she gets really into like the neuroscience of it and like like an evolutionary perspective on burnout. And so she really kind of helps you understand what's going on in your brain and body around burnout and what you can do in terms of completing the stress cycle. The big secret is exercise, because that's how historically and evolutionarily we would complete a stress cycle. You think of like running from a tiger. Well, when you stop running, you've either been eaten or you're still alive. And that your body's kind of like, okay, we're safe now. We now have a very sedentary culture. And so moving is what helps our body understand that we're safe now, because an email feels like a tiger sometimes. So Burnout by Emily Nagoski for sure. There's also, I guess I'll call her an influencer, named Casey Davis, who has a brand called Struggle Care. And that's a little more around caregiver burnout and like the burden of domestic labor and kind of perfectionism around like, I need to have all the dishes done and all the toys cleaned up and all of that. And just really like practical solutions for people who like don't have a lot of brain space or time. So those would be my starting places.
So that actually segues into my absolute first question for you. Many high achievers don't realize they're burned out until they crash. In your work, how do you help someone recognize that their hardworking personality might be a survival response?
I see a lot of hardworking people, a lot of healthcare workers that they grew up in a stressful environment. So a stressful environment feels normal to them, and they are seeking to just find that sense of normalcy. I have a friend who had a very traumatic upbringing, and she's like an incredible EMT, but like stressful, high stakes environment,
I think
right?
teachers would probably be in that same bracket
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of times we're always as teachers like, oh, your kid's ADHD, they would make a great teacher. And there's a lot of correlation between ADHD and trauma brain, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of signs and symptoms that overlap. And I think about that in a lot of these service jobs in
Yes.
that you are high needs and
Mm-hmm.
you're overstimulated.
Yeah.
You don't have time. I felt like, so I took a year off and worked on my mental health and then returned to the classroom. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized like, oh my gosh, all of my peers are really triggered and they're here. I was here for 14 years. And then that 15th year, I felt like I taught from my frontal lobe because you have humans in your way for 40 hours a week. You don't ever finish processing a single thought for 40 hours a week. But my husband's also a police officer, so I see it in his job. I think any job where you are just, like you're saying, first responders, and you're in humanity, right? Where like you're not on your own timeline. You are on other people's time frames for needing help and service.
So how do you recognize if this is just a hardworking personality or they've crossed the line into what we would say burnout?
Well, there are different stages of burnout. Just like physical burns have different degrees, burnout has different degrees. So like mild burnout, you're going to see more aches and pains. You're going to be a little like, I'm not really looking forward to going to work. I'm not that inspired. And just like a little cynicism, and like it's a struggle to mentally engage with it, but like you can do it. Like it just takes a little more effort, right? And then moderate burnout is like you are having more like noticeable health impact, and it's also starting to impact your relationships and your relationship to work, and really seeing an increase in cynicism there. And then that late stage burnout is like you are in crisis, like you cannot keep going. Like I've not seen a person that came to me in that like crisis state, severe burnout, where they didn't need to take medical leave, and like a substantial medical leave, not a 2-week vacation, not just like a month off, but like 3, 6, 12 months off to fully recover.
So when someone knows they're burning out but fears slowing down, thinking, I'll fall behind, how do you help them reframe that?
Okay, what's the cost of falling behind? Like
How much is this costing you?
yeah, how much is it costing you? Who benefits from you continuing to burn yourself out? And sometimes it's us that benefits from a period of very intense work. I want to differentiate. Like there are some jobs that are kind of cyclical. That, you know, like I work with a lot of lawyers, tax accountants, teachers. You often have the summer off, and that you know that there are kind of stressful seasons, but there's a rhythm and a predictability to it. And short bursts of stress are actually good for us. They help the body repair cells. It kind of activates the immune system. But just chronic high stress, pervasive, like that's actually very bad for us. It is the opposite in terms of our health and well-being.
I want to go back to Daren's question. So he said, I'll fall behind. And I am in the mindset world. So to me, my first thought to that question, Daren, was like, well, that's all mindset shift. Like, I'll fall behind. What does that mean to you? Because to me, going back to where I was dysregulated is falling behind. So I will do anything. I will make sure all of my self-care is getting me back to where I feel calm and centered and capable again, you know? And so to me, like, what does falling behind mean? And who's defining that? Is it you? If it's not you, does it matter? Right? I'm sure there are plenty of people who look on the outside of our lives and think we're all falling behind no matter what we're doing.
Well, there's a real difference between regressing and like not delivering reasonable work expectations.
Yes.
Right? Like, and sometimes they correlate, but yes.
I think we just need to give ourselves more grace in those spaces and see ourselves more abstractly than society wants us to.
It's very difficult in a lot of workplace cultures that reward overfunctioning and, you know, excessive productivity. I had a fascinating experience of working with a lawyer who went on medical leave and came back at reduced hours, which meant that he had a maximum number of hours he could bill per week. And that was a huge mindset shift to be like, oh, like I actually have to stop at this point. Likewise, I once used a plugin on my computer that would tell me when I was getting to a certain number of hours of work per day. And at one point I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try and work fewer than 6 hours a day. You know, as a therapist, like doing the intense one-to-one work. And that was a big mindset shift. Of course, I'm my own boss, easy enough to say, right? But the fear of falling behind, it's often rooted in something very deep and personal around worth, worthiness, value, feelings about being good or bad, having to like earn
trauma
your
from
space.
childhood.
And I use trauma with like a lowercase t, in that like we all have it. We all have some messaging. Even if we had a great childhood, there is a core message that we got at some point that we are acting out in our adult life.
So there's a myth I want to go over with you. You've said a vacation won't fix burnout.
It will not.
I'm in agreement with you, but let's talk about it. Why does the just take a break advice fail so many people?
Well, we're talking about a nervous system injury, which requires a tremendous amount of time to heal, very intentional approach to healing, and a vacation is rarely longer than 2 weeks. If you're a teacher, you have the summer, but still, we're talking about like you're going
It's
on a
still
cruise.
not enough to
No.
ground that central nervous
Yeah.
system. I can tell you from 15 years.
Yeah. So, there is no attention paid to like longer term healing of the nervous system when you take the vacation approach, and it's not looking at the root of the problem. Vacations are great. We all need and deserve them. They aren't the solution or the prevention to burnout.
So okay, I have this theory where I always talk about self-care in that like I am on a mission to really redefine what self-care can look like because I don't think it should be, day at the spa, shopping trip.
No.
Like
Oh no.
I was actually
That's not
just talking
self-care.
no, but we've like gotten, that's what the media and people want you to think. But I was actually talking to my husband, so going on a tangent, but he is seeing a new therapist now. They had his other therapist moved to Georgia, but he had a second appointment with her on Monday and they're talking and she's like, wow, you just have so much stress. What are you doing for self-care? And he like came home. He was like, I don't really know. Like I play video games, but like that's not really self-care. And I am a big believer that it is not self-care. It is actually the opposite of self-care. I think a lot of dudes use it to pretend like it's self-care, but it actually is just
It's
escapism.
a numbing or a checking out. The same way
It's not a coping
scrolling.
mechanism
Yeah.
for sure. Regardless, he was like, I don't really know. What else do I do for self-care? And I was talking to him about like how for me, I've had to redefine it and think, I have this process. Like, what is my challenge right now? Like, oh, I'm really stressed. Okay, let me identify what is causing me stress. My self-care is those solutions. So for me, I don't procrastinate. If I have something on my to-do list, maybe at a default, but I will immediately do it almost as soon as it touches before the ink is even dry on my to-do list. I'm like, oh, I just finished it because I'm very stressed when things are just like on my list, but sitting in my brain. That stresses me out and it takes up a lot of my brain power. So I just get it done so I don't have to worry about it. And so I was trying to think through like, what are examples that my husband does for this? He wakes up really early before his 6 o'clock shift. So he can sit at his computer and click and check his email and slowly wake up because he just needs that time. Like that's self-care. So I think about the same thing for your ideology of burnout. And like, I'm assuming that your thoughts and your answers and solutions, if not vacation, are more holistic in that sort of obtainable on everyday, doing breathing exercises, or what are your suggestions?
Yeah, let's hear.
This is a bit of a long answer, but it's like a whole theory that
I had a really long question, so long answer is very appropriate.
So I want everyone to imagine you have like a globe, right? And you know how like in school there were those really cool like cross sections of a globe, and you could like see the different layers of Earth. Yeah. To see the layers of Earth. So like the outer crust of this is your physical health. So like making sure you're accessing the care that's available to you, that you're taking medications as prescribed, like
showering,
drinking water,
eating healthy.
Well, that gets into behavioral. We'll talk about that. But this is like your actual medical well-being.
Got it.
Because there are some conditions that can make burnout worse or can look like burnout, like a thyroid condition or certain vitamin and mineral deficiencies, iron deficiency. And we like to rule those out because you can spend years and years like treating it, but you're not actually treating the cause. So anyone that comes into my practice, when was your last physical? And if it was in the last 6 months, great. And otherwise, we send them back to their doctor. And we start working with them, but we like, hey, go get a physical. And can you get these labs done?
Can I just name really quickly while you're talking about that? My biggest takeaway after working with teenagers, preteens in particular, nutrients, vitamins, make sure they're taking them. It will help you with all the hormonal stuff as well. I think we sometimes think about those physicals and doing blood work for adults, and we kind of don't think about those nutrient deficiencies and how they show up in our kids. And I personally have seen huge changes for my own children when I switched over those things. So
So that's the outer crust. The next one is you already started talking about, like the behavioral stuff. This is all the stuff that we like logically know we're supposed to do, but is actually like quite challenging to operationalize. So sleeping enough, eating 3 nutrient-rich and pleasurable meals a day, because food needs to be a balance of nutrients and pleasure. Drinking lots of water, that's kind of in the medical part, but and then looking at your intake of alcohol and other substances. I think with burnout, we see a lot of people overusing alcohol because they want to calm the nervous system.
They're trying to find a coping skill.
They're trying to find a coping skill. It works in the short term. And I like to say it's buying calm on credit, and then the bill comes due with interest. And moving your body. I feel like exercise, the word, comes with so much baggage, but like we really do need to move our bodies. Now, it has to be in a way that you find fun and sustainable. So I'm someone for whom like group fitness classes at a local studio works really well for me. And so that's what I do. And like 5 days a week, you'll find me doing that. And it's just kind of like set it and forget it.
And again, I think the other thing too with that, I think my version is hiking. And for me, like I always call it my mental health space too. I think that so often in our culture, it's like you should be thin and strong. And like there's these other components, which fine, if that's your goal. I will never be again. I am past that at this point in my life. But for me, it's like I want to feel strong. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to keep up with my kids. And recognizing that it can be truly just for mental health. And to me, like when I do it intentionally, I'm like, this is like not in lieu of therapy, but in addition to therapy. And I'm intentional about what I listen to. And I make sure my family cannot go with me because that intrudes on my mental health and all the things, right?
Well, there's really cool science behind this. Actually, we have some like very concrete data. Like not only does exercise improve your sleep, improve concentration, improve short and long-term memory, delay the onset of dementia,
and sleep helps you process the hard things. So it's like a cyclical thing happening here.
And helps with reasoning-based tasks. So all of those like cognitive reasons. But we know actually very concretely what types of exercise help for certain mental health conditions. So for anxiety, you want to do something that is more strength building. So like weightlifting, yoga, Pilates, like anything with resistance, body weight exercises. You might want to do a little getting your heart rate up as kind of like an exposure to like the fast heart rate that anxiety feels like. But in terms of actually regulating your nervous system down, as is the case that you need with anxiety, it's that strength building. And then for depression, you want to be doing more activating workouts. So your cardio, you can, swimming is great, running is great, rowing, jumping rope. It doesn't have to be like you set aside an hour. Like even 10 minutes of jumping rope will really get your heart rate up and help activate you. Maybe 5 minutes is plenty of jumping rope. Or, like jumping on a trampoline with your kids. Like I think we need to stop thinking of exercise as like this discrete thing that happens in a gym. Because like you said with hiking, and hiking is great. You can often like bring your dog. Some people really like to like hike socially, and finding movement that works for you, that is sustainable and fun, is going to help you recover and prevent burnout. So that's the second layer, is that behavioral layer. And the third layer is your social health, deep, meaningful, loving relationships. It's very clear that deep, meaningful relationships are the biggest determiner of health. People that have a life-threatening illness and have a strong community and lots of deep relationships, they have great outcomes.
I actually think this is like a problem in our country right now. Like we are so divided, and like Our families are more divided than they've ever been. The holiday table situation's more complicated than ever before. And I think truly, I mean, even I've seen it in kindergarten where wanting to just feel connection is an innate human need. It's just something that no matter how old we are, we can't outgrow it. We are never meant to be lone wolves.
There's a very small portion of the population that is okay being a lone wolf. And I don't want to pathologize them or make them feel broken. That's always been the case. But yes, like 99% of us are driven to connection.
You're absolutely correct. There are definitely, and I've seen kids where parents are concerned because they're sitting by themselves. I'm like, if they want to be, that's their choice. My son is like kind of like that too. So 100%, I agree.
I mean, we have a loneliness epidemic. I think that people's social skills are atrophying. COVID didn't help a whole generation.
The internet hasn't helped.
The internet hasn't helped. It's provided the illusion of connection. It has been a starting place for some connection, but if you don't take it off the internet. My 2 tips that I like to give for people that are wanting to expand and deepen their social circle, everyone knows the kind of general tips, but these are very specific. One is focus on repotting friendships, which is where like you take a friendship that exists in one context and then you put it in a different environment and the roots can go deeper and the plant can grow bigger. So let's say you have a friend at work that you're like, hey, actually, do you want to like grab a drink or like go get some dinner? Or, hey, after that volunteer day, like, do you want to like hit up this art show or something? Those kinds of repottings, that's how we actually deepen existing relationships. And then the other is to look for people who are in transition. People that they just moved or just started a new job or just got divorced or just had a kid. These kind of big life transitions make people more open to forming new connections. And people that are kind of just going along are a little set in their ways and they're less open to new friendships. Yeah.
And then the other thing that, going back to that first example too, I share this all the time with students. And honestly, I think even as adults, we need this reminder, but a lot of people are feeling very lonely. And that's like even before this loneliness epidemic. I mean, I've worked at 9 different schools in my career, which has been a really amazing educational experience. But I have started over in like my support system in my work environment 9 times. And I share the story where every single time, it took me a couple of times, but now I've gotten to a place where I know like, oh, it's okay. It's safe for me to go out there and be like, hey, Daren, did you and I maybe hang out? And know that like, a lot of us are just grading papers at night and really would love to have somebody else to like relate to. And, and I did have somebody who at the beginning of my journey said that like, oh, I've been feeling this way too. I'm glad you pulled that, pulled the plug and did that. I just think like if we can talk ourselves through that first initial contact, that's where it's the hardest. But if we recognize like, I bet Daren's also just as lonely as I am and just coach ourselves through that, you might see that a lot of people, whether you're a kid, teen, or an adult.
So the final layer, the final layer of this burnout prevention recipe is, I'm going to say spiritual health. I mean that in a very broad way and more along the lines of having a personal values system that you operationalize in your daily life. And I find a lot of people that are burnt out feel very disconnected from their values. And we actually do an exercise where it's just like, okay, well, what are your values? And they're like, I don't know. And I start listing some off like humor, community, service, compassion, justice, adventure, ambition, right? These are all values and we all have a set that resonate with us. And once we just identify those and you can stick them up somewhere or just have them in your mind, it becomes much easier to organize your life around them and make decisions based on them.
So I guess as we start to wrap up, Erin always has a bigger systemic type question for you. Erin, I'm going to let you do that.
Yeah. So if you could mandate like a change, I don't know, policy.
Societal
sometimes
policy.
Sounds a little like a law, but like a change. And maybe it's even like a stigma change to really prevent burnout. What would it be?
Honestly, I think I would go like very feminist and just like I think we need to stop viewing men and women as categorically different and having different expectations of them. I think that harms men and women, that we have these categorical expectations and restrictions. And I think if we can liberate ourselves from the confines of these rigid gender expectations, I think all of us would be happier.
I'm going to give you a really quick example because my father is still working and he is 74 years old. And my mother is not. She's been retired for quite a while, but she really loves that he's still working. And sometimes I don't talk to my father, but sometimes I'm like, that just feels so unhealthy that you are still at 74 and you can't just be liberated. He's like, I love work. I'm like, but do you? Or is this just the culture that you all have like created through your marriage, that you should forever work and be the provider and you're literally going to spend your last day at your desk? Just because there's that gender thing happening there and that my mom didn't have that pressure, and I'm seeing my father just age and age. I'm like, oh, you deserve to be liberated from that societal expectation, All right. So thank you again for joining us, Laurel, and for all of the incredible work that you're doing. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. If listeners and viewers want to connect with you and support you in your work or just generally want to chat, how can they do so?
Best place to start is our website, laureltherapy.net. And we're also on Instagram at Laurel Therapy Collective.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Laurel. And to everyone else who is listening, watching, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on post notifications so you never miss an episode. If you're listening on your favorite podcast directory, please leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps us. Go ahead and drop us a review as well. If you have an expertise in mental health, education, social justice, or just generally want to get on the show and chat with us, feel free to email us at unplugged@undomindset.org with Undo Mindset in the subject line. We're always looking for voices like yours to amplify. And please don't forget to share this episode with someone who might be feeling some burnout or struggling with their current job situation. Getting the word out is one of the best ways in which you can help your friends, help us, really support our mission and help us grow, getting mental health tools and resources out to as many humans as we can. We appreciate you following our work. Thank you so much and take care.